Hi, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this latest webinar from Orlo. Today's special is how public sector organisations can harness the power of Nextdoor, which is an association with Nextdoor. So really pleased to see so many of you have joined today. There'll be some familiar faces and hopefully some new faces as well. So my name is Darren Caveney from Comms 2.0. So I'm your host for the next hour, and we've got a glittering array of stars and experts to tell us all about the wonders of Nextdoor and I guess for me where it might form part of your new social media strategy for 2024. So we've got lots to cover, lots of questions. As always, we're really keen to get your questions. So any questions that you do have, I'll say this a few times, so sorry for repeating myself, but do please put your questions into the Q&A area and we'll get through as many of those as we can. We should have about a quarter of an hour at the back end to go through your questions. So we're really keen to hear about your experiences, but also your questions and thoughts and ideas. So lots to get through. I'll take you through the slides before I introduce you to our guest today. Just in terms of timekeeping, yeah, we've got an hour set aside for today. It is being recorded as well, so we'll get that out to you, and you can obviously share that with your teams and your colleagues if anybody's missed it. As I say, we really want to keep this conversational. We've got lots to say, but we want this to be two-way, so we're really keen to get your questions and thoughts. So as I say, do put those into the Q&A box. I suppose best way to describe today is we're going to look at best practice. So we're going to look at advice and tips to get the most out of Nextdoor, to get those customer success stories that we all want. We'll also be looking at all those kind of unique integration with Nextdoor, which I think is a really interesting development. So as an Orlo user myself, I'm quite looking forward to seeing how that can work for me as well. As I say, we'll do a panel Q&A, so you will get the opportunity to ask plenty of questions. I've got lots of questions as well, but we'd rather you asked all of the questions, of course. So our speakers today. First up, we'll have Hannah York, who's a digital consultant at Orlo. So hi to Hannah. Next, we've got Alice Skeets, who's head of partnerships, public services, government relations and small businesses at Nextdoor. So it's a really great opportunity for you to pick Alice's brains on all things Nextdoor. And then finally, we've got Hardeep Johal, who's Director of Product and Development at Orlo, and no doubt has played no small part in this new integration with Nextdoor. So any of your technical questions and advice you need, Hardeep is on hand to help you with that. So we'll get into things now. First up, we'll get Hannah to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her role as a digital consultant. So yeah, first up, over to Hannah.
Thanks, Darren. Yeah, so thanks for kind of having me. I'm Hannah, one of the digital consultants at Orlo. So I've actually been lucky enough to work here for the past 2.5 years. And my day-to-day role consists of speaking with communications and customer service professionals all across the public sector to understand their social media strategy, their comms objectives, and ultimately how Orlo can add value and help them achieve those objectives. I'm sure most of you on the call will know who Orlo are and probably using the platform. But for anyone who doesn't, we are the UK's #1 social media management platform, a title we're really proud to hold. Someone's going through slides there. Let me go back. A title we're really proud to hold. And it's one platform to manage all of those digital engagements, to be able to listen, understand and act. I'm going to let Hard speak about the product itself, but what I wanted to focus on today was around our public sector focus. So we're actually trusted by 400 public sector organisations all across the UK. As you can see on the screen, some of the largest police forces, some of the smallest councils, but we have a really great relationship with our customers. And that's helped shape Orlo's mission and vision. And actually a lot of synergy with Nextdoor's. So Nextdoor are on a mission for you to get the most out of your neighbourhood, similarly to Orlo's vision that I'll come on to shortly. But at the heart of that is trust in the community. So to set the scene a little bit around the audience we have on the call today and the sectors here, I have some stats around trust and the challenges we're seeing at the moment. So if we think about blue light and policing, 40% of people who experience or witness a crime would not report it. So they would not go to their local police force. 57% of people believe that care provided by the NHS has got worse over the last 12 months. We know there's a strain on our healthcare service, and patients have started to pick up on that. 42% of citizens do not trust the government with long-term planning. This is our MPs and people that are making some of the most important decisions across the country. And finally, 39% of the UK population do not trust their local government, people that are making decisions on a local level that are impacting our day-to-day lives. So I think in summary, these stats demonstrate there is a growing lack of trust across the public sector, which we know that these organisations are some of the most hard-working people that are trying to help the community, but there's this lack of trust, and this is what has helped shape Orlo's vision and mission. So on the left, you can see two quotes. In the top left is Orlo's vision: to create stronger and more resilient communities. This is what drives us. This is what helps us make our decisions at Orlo, and ultimately it's what we're striving to achieve. Just below that, we have our mission to build trusting communities through brilliant conversations. So we want to help all 400 of those public sector organisations to build trust in communities through brilliant conversations. And we actually feel we have a unique outlook on that, being a UK-based organisation. All of Orlo's employees are UK-based. Birmingham City Council is my local council. West Midlands Police Force are my local police force. So we really understand those local objectives, those local challenges that you're experiencing in your community. So everything that we do at Orlo, from our product to our partnerships, is shaped around this vision. And when we think about a community, as you can see on the screen here, this is the community of Cardiff. We have some really great relationships with our customers, the businesses that you can see on this slide, making up, the police force, the housing association, the NHS Trust, the council. This is what a community is. But what makes a thriving community? So a survey done by CSJ in 2021 surveyed 5,000 UK citizens across the UK and found there's actually 3 core pillars to what makes a thriving community. So number one, at its basic level, is security and ultimately stability, feeling safe where you live, having a home to live in, employment, adequate healthcare, all of which these organisations play an integral role in. Secondly, it's around connection. So more than just physical infrastructure, but allowing citizens to feel connected to one another in formal and informal settings. So places like libraries, local high streets, community hubs, again, in which our councils and housing associations play a huge role in. And then thirdly, to making a thriving community is around belonging and opportunity. This is where the community actually recognise that its people are what make the difference in that community. So citizens feel like they belong to something, they can make a difference in that community and actually play a role in its success, which is coming up in more and more conversations when we think about elections and people participating in that in local government. And when we think about these 3 core pillars and then the opportunity across social media, knowing that 84% of the population use those channels on an average of 116 minutes every single day, there's definitely an opportunity to enable communities to thrive there. And for those of you who have used Nextdoor, you'll know that there's definitely a community feel on there when you go on. And actually a lot of trust. So I'm sure Alice will come on to some of the features of Nextdoor. But when you think about things like the recommendation section on there, people or citizens are trusting other citizens to recommend products, services, and trust their opinion. So anyone who's not on that channel is probably missing that opportunity where there's that community feel and where there's that trust bubbling under the surface. And from our experience with our customers over the past 10 years, we've seen a lot of success in building trust by following these 4 key steps in what we call our trust pyramid. So to go through that on a basic level, at the very foundation, it's around open and honest communication with your citizens. being authentic, being transparent, telling them as an organisation what you're doing and why you're doing it. If you don't do this, you really can't begin to build trust. The second stage then, listening. We all know the saying, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. This is definitely one of the most important communications tools. It's around, as an organisation, knowing what, bugs your citizen, what makes them happy, what worries them. But I think most importantly, listening to what they care about. Then on the next stage, we're ready to engage. Oh, that's right. We're ready to engage. But I promise you, doing the first 2 stages, so that open and honest communication and listening, will really help shape your engagement. It won't be other departments coming to you telling you, do this campaign, can we do this messaging? It'll actually be you as a communications team saying what the impact of a campaign should be and how is that going to drive success for us as an organisation. At this point, engagement should then begin to become a 2-way process. So citizens feel that you're being honest with them, you're listening to them, and then as you start to engage with them, they'll begin to engage back. So we can feel that trust being built. This then leads to the 4th stage, which is experience. So when a citizen comes to you, whether that be, ringing up your customer service team, whether that be coming into your local council house, or whether that be a message on Nextdoor, it's around how you make them feel when they interact with you and that experience to continue to build that trust. And these are all the steps that will lead to building trust. There's definitely no magic wand. I'm not going to sit here and say it's easy. It takes years to build and can be lost in seconds. But I think just to summarise my section around trust and the mission that we're on with ourselves and our customers, I just want to leave you with this quote from Catherine Howe from a local authority. So I'll let you read that for a second. I think Catherine hits the nail on the head with the mission that we're on within the public sector to build that trust, utilising the power of community tools like Nextdoor. And for just as a note, if anyone wants to find out more about Orlo and Nextdoor's integration, obviously Hards and Alice are going to go into some more detail now, but after the session, if you'd like a follow-up, just type Nextdoor into the comments and either your customer success manager at Orlo or one of the digital consultants will get in touch with you. So I'll hand back over to Darren. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Hannah. That's really helpful, and I think some really important topics there. And it's so unfortunate, isn't it, that trust's falling when there's so many amazing people on the call, talented people doing really important work every day. So every opportunity to build trust has to be one we grab hold of. So thanks, Hannah. We'll come back to you a little bit later on. So next up, we've got Alice Skeets, who, as I say, is head of partnerships at Nextdoor. So Hannah, we're really keen to hear all the latest news and best practice and advice and tips with all things Nextdoor. So I'll let you go ahead and just do that.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I am Alice. Lovely to meet you. As Darren explained, I head up our public services at Nextdoor as well as our local businesses. A little fun fact about myself. So I joined Nextdoor in April 2018, so I'm just about to approach my 6-year mark. But prior to joining Nextdoor, I spent the best part of 10 years maybe of my career working in PR and comms within public sector. So I began my career working for a local authority, Southend City Council, and then I spent 5 years working within law enforcement. 2.5 of those was for the City of London Police. And I say this because I think it's a really good point for all of you to know that I was a public sector comms professional myself. I understand how your teams work, but I also understand the pressures that you face, the lack of resources, the lack of funding, and just generally, the day-to-day account management of a social media channels, but also having to deal with crisis comms situations. So Hopefully, most of you know Nextdoor, have heard of Nextdoor, but if you haven't, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about who we are, what we do, and why neighbours come to our platform. So we launched Nextdoor in September 2016, and at the moment, 1 in 4 households across the whole of the UK are on our platform. So we have a large share of the market. Now, in London, that strengthens to 1 in 3 households. So this means that 97% of households are within a launched Nextdoor neighbourhood. We have a dedicated platform for local businesses, and we have over 3.6 million claimed business pages globally. So why do neighbours come to our platform? We see that primarily a neighbour joins Nextdoor for utility. So that might be that they want a recommendation for a plumber or an electrician. Perhaps their favourite fish and chip shop has closed down, so they want to find the new best one that's available. They might have a bit of a spring cleaning going on, so they've got some things to get rid of for free or perhaps to sell. But what we then see is that neighbours stay on the platform for the community. So that might be because they are joining a litter picking group. It might be that they are setting up a support network, perhaps for like new parents. It might be that they want to organise a street party in the summer. And we have seen over the years with these moments that we have faced and the challenges that actually neighbours are really using Nextdoor during a moment of crisis. So no surprise to you all, during COVID, it became a lifeline for neighbours. So we saw so many people overnight have all of their kind of life shut off. So the social media platforms that they were using to connect with their friends and family weren't as important because suddenly they were, locked down in their houses. And we saw an influx of people joining Nextdoor. And they used the platform to reach out to those in need. But we also saw a lot of people ask for help. And in that time, we created something called our help map, where people could raise a digital hand to say, I'm available. And it might be from picking up food shopping or a prescription. And so neighbours really are here to help one another in a time of need. Over the years, we have developed our platform to really help us foster these kind relationships and to foster trust, which obviously Hannah has touched on earlier. Now, I won't go through all of our developments, but there are just some key things that I want to point out. So we've really been leaning into machine learning, and some of the ways that we've been able to utilize this technology is with our kindness reminder. So this uses technology to pick up on certain language that has been reported and violates our guidelines. And then a pop-up will appear when a neighbour is using this language, and it will ask them whether they want to rephrase or edit their post. We also use the same technology for our auto moderation tool for our public service pages. So again, this detects a threshold of reported comments and then will automatically close the comments and the discussion. We have also developed this year our AI assistant. So this is for our neighbours. So when our neighbours are posting for a recommendation, our AI assistant will kick in and will ask them whether they want to use it to get a better response. So this uses a function a little bit like ChatGPT, and it will help them make their post more engaging and hopefully get a better response to their community so that they can get their recommendation from their neighbours. So what are Nextdoor's public service pages? So essentially, we provide public services with a page to be able to communicate and engage directly with their residents. I really believe this provides a lot of value and features that no other platform provides for public services. I think an important call out to note is that when you have a public service page and you log in, you cannot see the conversations and the news feed that you see within a neighbourhood view. And that being said, engagement will take place on your post within the comments section. I'm really excited that we've partnered with Orlo because this has been a partnership that our customers and our partners have wanted for years. So from when I joined Nextdoor in 2018, the first thing that partner said to me is like, we want to manage Nextdoor within a social media platform. And some of the amazing call outs that we've been able to bring through this Allo partnership are even some features that we don't have within Nextdoor organically. And the one that I really wanted to call out is the ability for you to draft and schedule posts. And I think this is great because we all know that comms teams and customer service teams are under a lot of pressure. And just to be able to make your work more efficient and more timely, and to be able to account for holidays, times off, and even weekends. This ensures that your Nextdoor content is consistent, it is regular, and it's kept up to date through this Allo integration. So when it comes to our partners, we have over 360 public services in the platform. So we've got about a quarter of UK police forces, and we've got over 40% of local councils, and we have 40% of fire services. We also have central government on the platform, and that's about 10 government departments so far. One of the most newest additions was the Prime Minister, who joined us earlier this year, the Prime Minister's office, which we're really proud of because it's actually the first Prime Minister or President on the platform, as we are actually live in 11 different international markets. So why is Nextdoor great for resident engagement? So I'm going to run through some unique features that Nextdoor offers. The first being you have instant audience distribution. So the way we create your page is we use something called GIS shapefiles, and we get these from Ordnance Survey. And when we create your page, we upload these so it mirrors the area that you serve. And what this then does is it aggregates all of the neighbours on the platform within your service area. You don't have to build up followers or likes, you're instantly connected to them. And so this means that you're going to tap into a much wider demographic. And so traditionally with social media, those people have an active interest in your organisation. With Nextdoor, they don't have to have that proactive, active interest. And so you're going to tap into a much wider demographic. Another unique feature is our geolocation. So you can target your post by geographical area, and you can do this either to your entire service area, or you have your custom areas, which is district, borough, or ward. You also have the ability to postcode target. So this is really great. You can choose a postcode and then you can select between 0.5 and 2 miles. And then this aggregates all the Nextdoor neighborhoods within that area for you to target that post. At Nextdoor, you're going to be targeting real people at real addresses. So all Nextdoor neighbors have been confirmed to live in your service area. So if you're going to put the time and effort into this platform, you know that you're going to be tapping into real residents that matter to you. So unlike traditional social media where everyone and anyone from across the world can follow you, with Nextdoor it's only going to be your residents. Now, when it comes to posting Nextdoor, we have a couple of different options. We have our general posts, which are quite similar to traditional social media. So again, you can post into the community, you can include images and videos, and there's no character limit. So actually you, with Nextdoor, long form messaging works really well. We also have the ability to post a poll, so you can ask a question and have multiple choice answers. And polls are a really great way to drive that interactive engagement. And then we have the ability to also send an emergency alert. Now, this is a really great feature, and I really urge you to use this in high risk and sudden incidents. And as you can see here in the example, the urgent alert, the emergency alert appears with like a red banner, so it stands out in the news feed. And if a neighbor has signed up to it, they'll receive this also as a dedicated email and a push through notification. So it really allows you to get that message out in a timely fashion. All of these different types of posts can be targeted in the same way when it comes to geolocation. So again, you can post the entirety of your service area by district, borough, or ward, or by postcode targeting. So how can you get the most out of Nextdoor? Now, like most social media platforms, we use a complex algorithm to determine our newsfeed, and this is updating daily to serve the needs of our neighbours. But like most other social media platforms, engagement is what really helps your post serve well in terms of impressions and with reach. And so we need to think about top engagement drivers. And our top engagement behaviors on Nextdoor are reactions, comments, and replies. So these are just some top tips to get you thinking creatively about how can we drive those engagement behaviors. So the first I would say is keep it local. I know that our teams are under-resourced, and so creating specific content for every platform is difficult. But if you can just spend a couple of minutes tailoring your Nextdoor message to the local community, so letting your residents know that this is for neighbours in that area, perhaps using the town or the borough or the ward name, this will really show that you are creating this really local content. Make it captivating. So again, this is a rule that we tend to use on most social media platforms, but you want to make your content stand out. And within our platform, most neighbours don't use imagery or video in their regular posts. So if you utilise imagery and videos, it will make your content stand out amongst the neighbours' content within the newsfeed, and it will really make it kind of aesthetically appealing. Obviously, we've explained here that engagement is what helps with the visibility and the reach of your post. So try to think of creative ways that you can drive engagement. How can we get more people commenting and reacting to your post? So there's a number of ways we can do this. You could perhaps ask them a question, seek their ideas or views. You could use Nextdoor to run a competition or a giveaway, or perhaps even do a live Q&A post with comments in the thread. And get your residents to share information and top tips. So it's probably no surprise our neighbours love to get involved and they love to contribute. And so there's just a couple of ideas that we've had on how can you encourage this with your community. So it might be asking them to share their top local landmarks. It might be asking them to share pictures of their four-legged furry friends, or maybe even recipes from their communities and cultures. Photo sharing is a huge hit on Nextdoor, and it really helps to drive engagement and comments. So it could also be useful to perhaps do a bit of a photo competition, as this can help drive marketing assets. Now, this links into my next slide and actually follows closely to our best performing campaign that we had on Nextdoor this year for neighbour content. So Nextdoor ran something called Picture Perfect, where we encouraged neighbours to share images of their pets, and it went amazingly well. So images always work. This is a really great example that we have here from Hastings Borough Council, where again, they ran a little competition asking their neighbours to submit photos to help collate new imagery for their Nextdoor banner. What I love here is that they stipulate that by participating in this competition, you are granting them permission to use their image at any stage for their banner. What I think could also be utilised here is actually you could say, if you submit your photo, this could be utilised for any marketing assets. And in this way, you're building up a whole bank of amazing photo collateral, which we all know is really difficult to do. Hiring a photographer is costly, is expensive, and you would have to do it quite a lot to keep that bank updated. So this is just a great way to utilise your neighbours to help you with your own marketing efforts. Again, like I just mentioned, animals always go down well on Nextdoor, as does heartwarming stories, good news stories. So this is kind of tapping into that picture perfect theme that we did earlier this year. You can see Staffordshire County Council wanted to celebrate International Dog Day. And so they asked their neighbours to share pictures of their dogs, and it really helped boost engagement and drive that conversation between the community. This one is a golden oldie, but is one of my favourites. So this is an example from the Met Police. They had a high-risk missing person, and they posted on Nextdoor that they were searching for this individual. You can see here in the comments a neighbour responding to say she's actually with the man right now, and she's called 101 and she can't get through. You can then see here in the comments the exchange between the PCSO and the neighbour, which is then closed off with the man has been found safe and well thanks to the efforts of the community. And now I think a really important call out with this is that from the moment of posting this to the man being located was a space of 45 minutes. So when you're thinking of policing resources and efforts, the fact that we were able to locate this individual in 45 minutes has really helped with sending out foot patrols. And so I think this is just a really great example of how you can use your community to be your eyes and ears of the neighbourhood. Here are some other examples from police forces. So again, one that I really love. So when I attend police meetings in my own neighbourhood, the general consensus seems to be there's not enough bobbies on the beat anymore. We never see you out and about. And so I think this is just a really great way to show how we are really investing in our police presence in local neighbourhoods. So the first one actually is informing neighbourhood patrols. So this was Enfield Police. They post into the community and they say, we're out and about today. Where would you like us to cover? You can see here a neighbour responds about Leighton Road. And what then happens is the neighbours say, great, the police say, great, we've added this to our list. And then when they're out and about in those areas, they take a picture of the road name or a picture of the officers down that road, and then they upload it onto the post as comments in the thread. And I think it's just a really fantastic way to build trust with your community, to show them that you're listening and that you're acting on their feedback. The other two are examples of how police forces are using other types of technology and apps to also build trust and listen to their community. So these are using apps such as like Map My Walk or Strava. And again, tapping into that theme of, oh, we don't see you out there, there's not enough bobbies on the beat. It's showing our neighbours that we have been out today, keeping you safe. We've been out in the community, and this is the ground that we have covered. And these are the areas that we have visited. And I think, again, it's just a really great way to build that trust and to show the communities that neighbourhood policing is out there and serving the areas. So how are our partners driving results through Nextdoor? So I have a couple of examples here from some of our partners who are happy to share how they've been using the platform. The first is Richmond Council, and this example is from October 2020. So a call out here that it was still very early days of COVID, and we didn't actually know much about long COVID. So Richmond Council has a podcast, and they had a medical expert coming on to talk about the experiences and symptoms of long COVID, but they needed to find a case study to be able to join them. They posted onto their social channels, but it yielded quite little results. And so they then utilized Nextdoor. So they put a call out and it sparked amazing interest. So lots of residents replied and wanted to get involved. So this was really great for the council for their podcast, because they were able to utilize several of these case studies to join this medical expert. But what then also happened is that the neighbours started talking on that post thread amongst each other and sharing their own lived experiences. And as a result, they then set up a support group that became a real lifeline during this really difficult time. And I think that's just, again, taps into that point I made earlier about Nextdoor being this place for community. So people are coming to get their jobs done, but then they're finding this meaningful and this connection with their neighbours, and they're staying there and really nurturing those relationships. This example is from the UK government. So as I explained, we had the UK Prime Minister join earlier this year. And one of the first posts that they put out was about the new antisocial behaviour laws that were coming into force. And when they shared this post, they included a link to the information on their website, and they saw a huge amount of traffic coming through from Nextdoor to their website. So it's just a great way of showing that you can use Nextdoor to drive engagement to your other platforms. So whether that is your newsletter, a mailing list, or your website for further information. This is another example from the UK government, and again, tapping into this theme of neighbours coming to our platform in a moment of crisis. So the Environment Agency has been utilising Nextdoor, particularly in recent months with extreme weather conditions. And you can see here that they issued 95 flood alerts across the whole of the UK, across all their social media accounts, to make sure that residents were safe and well informed. Out of those 95 posts, it garnered 9 million impressions, but 85% of those impressions came from Nextdoor. So just to bear in mind, this is going to the entirety of the UK. Only 15 of the 95 posts were sent on Nextdoor. So that means that 7.8 million impressions came from just those 15 posts. So it really shows that in a moment of crisis and in a moment of need, that content is really well received by our community. This is an example from Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service. They were really keen to seek the views and opinions of their residents to help inform them on priorities and risks across their service area. So they recently conducted a survey, and they utilised several channels to get this survey out. So they used direct email marketing, which we know is a really significant driver for calls to action. They also used paid ads on social media platforms, and then they used organic social media. And Nextdoor actually came in third for the highest amount of survey completions, just behind their email campaigns and their paid for advertising from Facebook. So considering that Nextdoor is completely free and is a much quicker and simpler and easier tool than setting up a email campaign, it just shows you the high results that it can yield. And then lastly, my final example is from Cambridgeshire Fire and Rescue Service. So we've got an example here of a post that they put on Nextdoor, which they told us received 7 times more views than their other social media channels. So it just shows that their community is a lot more engaged in Nextdoor than their other social channels. And similarly, they have also done a survey to find out about their residents' views. And they found that 10% of the residents who completed this survey directly came from Nextdoor. So again, you're tapping into a really engaged and active audience. That is it from me. So I will hand you over back to Darren.
Oh, Darren, you're on mute.
I knew that would happen. Sorry.
No, it wasn't me.
Thank you very much, Alice. That was really helpful, and good to know, isn't it, that pictures of animals is still evergreen content after all these years. So that's heartening to know. Loads of questions coming in, so we'll be coming back to you for those, Alice, in the Q&A. If you've got more questions, do put them into the Q&A chat, and we will get as many of those to our panel as we can. Anything we can't get through today, we'll look to get answers from the panel and come back to you after the event. A couple of you asked about whether the session is being filmed. It is, so we will get that recording out to people that are signed up as well. So next up, we've got Hardeep Johal, who, as I say, is Director of Products and Development at Orlo, and can tell us a little bit more about the integration and how that's working and kind of the functionality and etc. So over to you, Hardeep.
Yeah, thanks, Darren. Yeah, so what I aim to do over the next 10 minutes or so is talk about how we've been able to incorporate Nextdoor's functionality with the broader Orlo platform and how you're using it with, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, and all the rest as well. Just a bit of repetition, really, just to start with what Hannah was talking about earlier, and that we're really proud to be the UK's #1 social media management platform. We also happen to be the only social media platform in the world focused on the needs of the public sector. And it might sound a bit weird, but listening to Hannah earlier actually made me feel really proud about the stuff that we've achieved so far. And also looking at what Alice is talking about, how communities are thriving through social as well, just for me lays out a really exciting path for where we're working together on this partnership. This is going to sound a bit doom and gloom, but there was a bit of repetition earlier from what Hannah was saying, is that we've got millions of individuals in the UK based in thousands of different bits of community who are all trying to engage with the hundreds of different departments and organisations that live within that public sector umbrella. And it's just ever more getting more complex in terms of the new social networks appearing, the rules changing all the time, Elon Musk taking over Twitter, and what changes does that make? And also just the changing demographic of people as well. It's, you know, my parents aren't necessarily on social, but they are nervous to get into it and trying to learn how to get there as well. And I think the role of organisations like Orlo and Nextdoor is to help communities and the organisations get the best out of social media. So you've got individuals trying to contact organisations, you've got organisations wanting to engage and communicate back out, but also it's listening in and understanding what are the needs of those communities, what's working, what isn't working, what's making people happy, and what changes do we need to make. And through doing that, we believe that we can build trust in community through brilliant conversations and use digital channels and technology to help harness that. What we've also noticed is that public sector tends to lag slightly behind the private sector in terms of adopting technology, particularly technologies like social media, and like WhatsApp and SMS and so on as well. And what we're seeing with our customer base is when they come on board, depending on their social media maturity, they tend to go on this sort of journey. Typically, they'll begin with posting content out on socials, just making people aware of them, their presence, sharing information. And as they start to get a bit more mature, maybe it takes a year or so, they start to realize that that outbound contact that they're sort of creating, that engagement, is encouraging their community base, their citizens, to start responding and interacting with those posts. It goes beyond just a like or a share. It could be a comment, it could be a DM, it could be that really, you know, quite compelling example that Alice shared about, I know where that person is, like I can help. And at that point, you don't want to miss those opportunities. So you need to make sure that you're not just broadcasting out, it's that you're taking in that information, learning from it and dealing with it as well, whether it be tactically or strategically, which goes on to really the third point of social media maturity, is using the information, the data you've gathered to make strategic decisions. It's not always about what post should we put out on social next. It could be, we've just learned something here about, from the data we've gathered, what changes can we make within our organization, whether it be policy changes, product changes, service changes, whatever it may be, based on that, and then go back and understand what impact has that had on that community base. The way Orlo does that is by being a platform that from day one has been built to manage not just your reputation and your marketing and communications, but also citizen and customer service from day one. We have 3 core modules that sort of deliver that. The first being the customer service or citizen service module. This is your inbox. This is a place where all those channels are coming into one place. So your Nextdoor comment on a post, the direct messages, it's people responding to a post on Facebook or WhatsApp, they're all coming into this single inbox that help you manage that really easily. And sort of the pain that we want to take away from you is understanding what's going on with all those APIs and the changes that exist, that sometimes functionality arrives, it gets taken away, the data doesn't all look the same, and we want to make that really simple and easy for you as well. The second module is around marketing and communication. So this is, you're going to broadcast out information. I'll talk more about that later when it comes to managing demand and engagement. And the third module for us is active listening. So you'll refer to this as social listening, social media monitoring. And it's the deep intelligence that we're able to provide and gather information across everything from press and media sites, Mumsnet, but also what's happening in Nextdoor as well, to understand what conversations are occurring and what you can do with that data. And then finally, we have a layer of analytics that sits across all of that. So understanding what posts are getting the best engagement, when are you getting the most contact, are you responding to contact in a timely manner, but also, you know, what conversations are occurring, what's happening positively and negatively, is there a crisis emerging, that sort of stuff. From a slightly boring perspective, but necessary, is data and security. So when we talk about core capabilities here, what we're talking about here is you've got a platform that's reliable, resilient, but also secure. Data is stored and processed all in the EU and predominantly in the UK. We've got all the credentials you need around ISO 27001, Cyber Essentials, Cyber Essentials Plus, ISO 22301, all those sorts of things that make you know that you're dealing with an organization that is treating your data really seriously. And we know with the changes the government are making and the sort of demands they're going to place on data and security, you're in safe hands with us. Less boring, probably more interestingly, I saw a question come through on the channel earlier about how we're going to use AI technology and how we do use AI to automate and provide as much insight and information as possible. So automation could be routing messages to the right place at the right time, providing chatbots to respond to certain conversations, but also having a deep understanding of the conversations that are happening, what emotions are sort of being created by certain posts or certain initiatives that happen in different communities, and how you can then respond to that as well. One of the challenges we know that we're all facing, you know, all over, but public sector organisations as well, is managing engagement. And one of the big shifts we're seeing in our communities is actually us, the people. The changing demographic of the individuals who are dealing with public sector organizations now are digital first. And similarly, the colleagues that you're hiring or working with you now in your teams want to be using the latest technology. We know there's a retention issue as well, like a staff retention issue within all different types of organizations. But some of the ways we can help that is provide the best tools possible to keep your employees engaged, but also to make sure that you're responding to citizens on the channels that they're at. And we know social happens to be one of those primary channels at the moment. And again, I mentioned earlier, we do tend to lag from where the private sector are at, but just look at what's happened there with mobile banking, and ASOS and Amazon, and how we deal with them, sort of experience we have with them. We want the same now from the public sector as well, me included. And social channels allow you to communicate with everybody instantly. Imagine how cheap that is as well to do. Before, it'd be sending out a letter, ages ago, then it was a text message or a phone call, but actually just to send a post out immediately is the most real-time way of you can interact with your community base. You can also use the data that's available to you within Orlo, so Nextdoor as well, the data that's coming in to identify where burning issues are and where you're performing really well. So this is talking about when, the busiest time of contact is. It's what topics are currently causing demand in your contact center teams or your agents dealing with a contact as well. So the inbound messages you're receiving to then help change either how you resource those teams when you put people in place to deal with contact, or also what content you can put out there to sort of deflect any unnecessary noise as well. You could also involve your citizens in the decision-making process as well. If you know that there's a consultation about to happen, the district I live in, Warwick District Council, there's lots of new housing estates being developed, there's HS2 going on, all that sort of stuff. The sort of technology that we're going to be implementing in RQ2, so January onwards, is the implementing the geo-targeting piece that Nextdoor provide. So we'll be able to pinpoint direct communities within a wider county base to say, right, this is what's happening in your area. We'd love to know what you think. Either interact with this post, comment on here, or it could be go to this town hall meeting where we're going to have a physical conversation, or there's a web portal that you may want to log into so that you can sort of involve them in the conversation, help them to create the right decision for you, and then communicate that back out on networks like Nextdoor so that, we had this consultation, this is what you told us, and this is what we're doing about it. So you're closing the loop and creating that trust again. Personally speaking, where I live, I don't always understand why decisions are being made by this particular council, but if they actually shared that information with me, which open and transparent, I'd feel a lot better about what they're doing, rather than the slightly cynical self that happens to be at the moment. Talking back to what Hannah spoke about earlier, that's identifying if trust is an issue. Like we are saying as a blanket statement that trust is ever decreasing across the public sector. But we've actually in Orlo, and if you're eagle-eyed amongst you later on, we'll see a snapshot of what this looks like on a later slide, but we've developed a trust indicator using the AI technology I mentioned earlier through a product that we have called Orlo Insights. And within that, you'll be able to identify on a scale of -100 to +100 how trusted you are or not. And we'll be using the data that we receive from Nextdoor and the other networks as well to calculate that score. And it's based on various emotions and an algorithm that we've created. We'll also tell you what the drivers of trust and distrust are as well, so you can start to address them. And we think this is going to be a real key part to sort of how you manage your reputation as an organization within your community. I think before it's been quite a vague thing, like we are trusted or we're not trusted. Well, actually, we'll be able to give you a measure and you'll be able to track that over time. And we'll give you an indication about what's causing the trust and distrust. So we think we'll benefit a lot from that. That slide I showed you earlier on, we had all those people on the right-hand side and all the channels and then the organizations on the left, is quite daunting. You're all far too busy. You're busy enough. You're resource strapped. Budget's being cut. And what we want to do is help you sort of manage that inbound demand. One of the ways you can do that is a tool we have called Push Mode. So this lives within the inbox. You can say, I've got 5 contact center agents working at the moment, or a team in marketing. There's 3 of us, we're on Orlo at the moment. We think we can all handle about 3 conversations at any one time. And what we'll do is we'll route the right conversations to the right people so you don't feel overwhelmed by an inbox full of thousands of messages. You can just work through that as and when you're online or offline and set yourself as busy and just manage that queue so that you can provide, realistic response times to individuals where it makes sense. And I think this is really important. We do this for a lot of organizations. And then if you put a team of people who are already feeling under pressure and you show them an inbox full of thousands of messages on social, it's really difficult to know which ones to work on. You're just going to feel overwhelmed. So we want to take some of that pain away and some of that anxiety. The next thing you could use is a tool of Orlo is called Triggers, which provides automation. if, let's say, a message comes in on Nextdoor and someone's saying, I'm feeling really vulnerable about a particular thing, we know somebody saying something like that is a real sensitive thing that you want to deal with straight away. And you probably want to deal with it privately rather than in a public sphere. You can use tools like triggers to create these workflows, a bit like If This Then That, if you're familiar with those sorts of products, where you can say, if a message comes in containing such and such criteria, or if on a particular search stream that you've done through social listening, if there's content in there around a particular topic, you can then say route that to a particular individual or a particular team. Or we've done some really clever stuff with Microsoft products in the past where we've pushed it through to Microsoft Teams, because you may not always be living in Orlo, or we can send you an email so you can be notified of it. And those urgent things, or those things where you think this particular person's better to deal with it than another person, you can route all that through just to make sure that people have effective responses in a timely manner. And then the third piece really is just being proactive. Again, to manage that inbound demand, one of the best things you can do is share information sooner rather than later. And there definitely should be a Nextdoor logo on this slide here. What I'm really saying there is, if you know there's a problem occurring, or if you know there's a consultation about to happen, or a road closure, or whatever it may be, share the information on social so it reaches the broadest base of your community, to then prevent any of that inbound contact coming in, where, if they just went on your socials, they would have seen the information, to prevent that inbound demand. So in essence, where I think Orlo plays a role within your organization is it allows you to really listen in on all the conversations that happen across all the different social channels, to help you understand what those conversations are, where you need to react, respond, to then ultimately take action. Now, that action isn't just put that social media post out. It could be, do you know what, we know that 18 to 24-year-old males in Coventry are really disgruntled about this particular thing. And there's a question I saw in the Q&A panel a moment ago about demographic information and what sort of tools do we provide there. Well, we use AI to try and generate as much demographic information as possible, such as locations, ages, genders, etc. And if you can identify certain individuals or groups of people are happy or unhappy with a particular thing, well, what changes are you going to make? What initiatives are you going to provide to sort of get them engaged again, or to rectify particular issues? And then the goal then being ultimately to then listen again. Have you had the positive desired effect, to then help you understand, right, yeah, we have solved that problem, and then maybe to take more action, or actually, that did what it needed to do. And we see this as being a virtuous cycle that now Nextdoor is at the core of as well. So in a summary, I just wanted to give you a quick walkthrough of what we're trying to do at Orlo with Nextdoor data and the partnership that we've got. And it's been great working with them and developing the APIs together. They've been really responsive in terms of the requests we've had. So it's been like a real positive partnership of ours. And just once again, echoing what Hannah said earlier, if you're interested to know more about this integration and how it can work for you, just type Nextdoor in the Q&A box and one of the Orlo team will get in touch.
Thanks very much, Hardeep. Some really useful information and helpful advice there as well. We've got about 10 minutes left for questions, and we've got lots of questions in the chat already. Just to repeat, if you've got questions based on anything Hardeep's just said, for example, do put them into the Q&A chat, and we'll get back to as many of you now as we can. Anybody we can't cover off, we'll get back to you after the webinar. So kick off first. We've got lots of questions for you, Alice, as you might imagine. First off, we've got Xander Mills, who's from the excellent South Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service. Hi to Xander. So Xander's question essentially is around whether he'll be able to use the app for the public sector pages in the future. Is that something that might be coming in the future?
So at the moment in time, it is only available on desktop, but we know that our partners do want to use Nextdoor out and about. And so the app would be very useful for that. So it is something that is high on our list and that we've been sharing with our product and engineering teams. I know that in the US, they have the app experience. And so we are hoping it will be something that comes to the UK very soon. We know that there's some kind of like tips and tricks that can help you get around it. So things very simplistically, like saving the Nextdoor login page or your newsfeed page to your phone as an icon. So it's just there and you're not having to type it into your browser. It makes it a little bit easier. But we do hear you, and it is definitely something that I am bubbling up. So as soon as we get any product developments or enhancements, we always communicate those to our existing partners. So if that is in the pipeline and coming, we will let you know.
Brilliant. That's helpful. Thanks, Alice. Another one which could be in the pipeline, I guess, this is from Andy Jordan, who asks about images and the ability to add alt text. Is that something that might come up in the future as an option?
again, it's not something we have at the moment, but it is definitely something that we have been bubbling up. I'm not too sure. Hards might be able to answer this and whether that's a function within the Orlo integration.
Yeah, so it's something we support on the various networks. As I mentioned earlier, we've been working with the team in the US really closely to develop the APIs out. So these things are certainly coming very shortly. Again, what Alice said earlier, when you said when you joined Nextdoor, when I joined Orlo, it was like when you're going to integrate with Nextdoor, it's just been that thing that's forever been there. So we're definitely making good headway in building out the APIs and the integrations.
Brilliant. Thanks both. There's a couple of questions around kind of data and insights and what's available, and again what might be coming further down the track, and I guess what's possible as part of this integration. So perhaps all three of the panel could just tell us a little bit more about kind of currently data and insights that's available, what the integration with Orlo might mean, and basically all things data and insights, because we're all comms anoraks. So what's the latest on that?
I can cover some of that from an Orlo perspective. I think I've seen a question coming on Q&A around, firstly, what Orlo is going to provide you is the ability to have one Nextdoor account whereby you can have multiple people communicating on it. So it's not just one username and password shared amongst lots of people. What that then gives you is the ability to say, if you're getting all these bits of contact coming in, so, messages on posts or direct messages or whatever it may be coming in across the network, you can start to see, right, when does that volume of contact come in? What does that contact tend to be about? Are we responding to it in a timely manner? When we're putting posts out, how many likes and shares are we getting? That sort of stuff, click through, so measure the amount of clicks you're getting. And then you've also then got like the sort of table stakes functionality that you can get through Orlo, which is Alice touched on earlier on, drafts, scheduling, all that sort of stuff as well. Looking back at your outbox posts you've created previously and how they performed against others, that sort of stuff. So there's a vast amount of data. Then when you talk about the Orlo Insights module, which is where we do our really deep AI-based analytics, that's where you're going to get deep insight into what the key themes being discussed within that particular social account on Nextdoor, who is talking about it the most in terms of audience demographic information as well, how that thing's trending over time, are we seeing emerging risks, crises emerging, what's working really positively. There's a wealth of data sat there that you can get a lot of benefit from.
Brilliant. Thanks for that. Really, really helpful. Lots of questions flying in now, so I'm going to rattle through as many as we can before we finish. Next one's from Guy Evans from my local Brum City Council. Hi, hello, Guy. Be interested to know the data regarding the number of neighbours in Birmingham, for example. Might not be something that you can answer right now, Alice, but is there a way for Guy to find that out after the webinar?
Definitely. So I will get in touch with you, Guy, and I can supply you those figures so we can tell you how many neighbours we have in Birmingham City Council. And then I'll defer the cost on Orlo Nextdoor integration to one of the Orlo team. Millions.
No, I'm not. If you're already a customer, then your customer success manager can get in touch with you. If not, one of Hannah's team can get in touch to talk about costs, because it totally depends on which parts of Orlo you're buying or not, and where you want integrations to take place.
So yeah, thank you for that. So cost questions, we can pick up with individual kind of customer contacts, people from Orlo with individual customers. So maybe worth getting in touch with your contacts at Orlo to get the lowdown on that. Question which got lots of votes, which is from Jeff Cowart, which is the drafting and scheduling element only available via Orlo?
So yes, at this moment in time, you can't draft or schedule within Nextdoor natively, and Orlo is the only API integration partner that we've partnered with. So at this moment in time, that is the only way that you are able to draft and schedule.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. We're getting some thank yous for the answers as well, which is good to know. Xander's happy. So if Xander's happy, we're all happy today, aren't we? That's good news. Yeah, a couple of people asking for more information as well. So we've got people up in Scotland, wave to Eastern Bartonshire. So yeah, I'm sure the Orlo team will be getting in touch with Hannah and her colleagues. Andy Jordan, another question. Are you able to target boroughs and wards via Orlo?
That's the functionality that's coming early next year, so very early next year, yeah.
Yes.
For transparency, the Nextdoor API supports it. We've just got to implement it now from our side. Again, we've worked with the team in the US to say how that will work within Orlo. So if you're familiar with doing it on LinkedIn, Facebook at the moment, as you can do, it'll work exactly the same way. So it shouldn't be much training required there.
Brilliant. That's really helpful. So you're going to be busy, aren't you, Hardeep?
Not me. That's how you lose hair. That picture you had up earlier with me having hair makes me feel nostalgic. But
Oh, I remember those days too. Mindful of the time, we've got about a minute or so left. So perhaps just do one more question so I get us finished on time, which is Shafali. Are there going to be any updates to the campaign management element of Orlo? I don't know if that's maybe one for you, Hannah. Or is it Hardeep?
Probably be hard. So I just get told what they're developing at the time. But yeah,
we're adding stuff constantly. So it'll be, if you can get in touch with some specific things that you may be after, that's probably the best way to answer that. And I can let you know if there are things you're after actually going to be developed anytime soon. Yeah.
Fantastic. So all round, lots of exciting developments. And I suppose for me, you know, with my consultant's hat on, when I go around and meet teams and talk with teams about social media strategies for next year, it's all of this stuff's really invaluable. And, you know, I think the stuff we talked about at the beginning, which is about, you know, building engagement, you know, it's difficult to get good engagement, isn't it? We have to work hard at it. It's about managing that demand, which just increases and increases upon teams. And trust, you know, we're all duty bound to help, you know, we want the trust levels that we deserve. So we need to do more on that. So anything that all of these integrations can do to help that, I think is really, really important. So I'd like to thank the panel for all of your questions. Sorry if we've not got to your specific question. We will be getting back to you with as many of the answers as we can post event. So do look out for the email that will come out around that. I suppose key takeaways is just that, really, isn't it? We've got, you know, some really talented, hardworking teams on the call today, and who will watch the video afterwards. And we want to provide all the support that we can. And, you know, having the technology, having the data, having the insights, having the physical means to help really, really busy and stressed teams has to be a good thing. I think it sounds like the integration is going to be really, really helpful, and it's going to add an extra kind of dimension to what comms teams can do with social media in 2024. Many of those teams and many of the people on the call today will be looking at sharpening their strategy for next year. So hopefully today's webinar has been really, really helpful. AI, love it or hate it, it's here to stay. It can help us. It's not just evil, is it? There's very helpful elements to it, and we shouldn't be scared of it. We need to make it do lots of the grunt work for us, so that we can add our magic along the way and at the end. So our next webinar, details will be coming out soon. Do look out for it. We'll be talking about insights. So again, there's been lots of questions in the chat today about insights and data, and we want more of it, don't we? So the more we can have, the better decision making that we can have. So the next webinar will be coming up very soon, and we'll keep you posted on that. And finally, if you'd like to get in touch with Hannah, Hardeep, or Alice, all of their contact details are there. So make a note of that. And again, it'll come out in the slides that are to follow. A final thank you to Gemma, who's made today possible. So thank you to Gemma at Orlo for bringing us the webinar, and for almost keeping me to time. I've gone 2 minutes over. I apologize. So I think it's left for me to say thank you everyone for attending. We had almost 130 on the call at one point, which is brilliant to see. If you haven't already, go out, get some fresh air, grab a sandwich, and then come back and think about your social media strategy for 2024 and where Nextdoor might fit in conjunction with Orlo. So thanks everybody. I hope that's been useful, and we'll see you all again on the next webinar. Bye-bye now.